The desert wind howled across the endless dunes, carrying sand that could strip paint from metal. Deep beneath the surface, in a converted research bunker, Taewan barely heard it. He had lived here for 103 years, and the sound of the wind had become like his own heartbeat. Constant, expected, ignored. Taewan looked old but not ancient. His hair was gray, his face lined with wrinkles, but his hands were steady and his eyes sharp. The life extension treatments he had taken decades ago kept him healthy and strong. He appeared to be a man in his 50s, though he had celebrated his 147th birthday alone last month. Not that he celebrated much anymore. The bunker was his entire world now. 3 levels deep, powered by solar panels hidden in the sand above and a small fusion reactor he maintained himself. The walls were lined with equipment, computers, scanning devices, repair tools, and machines whose purposes only he remembered. He had built most of them himself, back when he still cared about sharing his work with others. That was before the betrayal. Before the corporation stole his research. Before High-End disappeared and everyone assumed he had died in the desert. He let them think it. Being dead was easier than being used. His daily routine never changed. Wake at dawn, check the systems, eat a meal of protein paste and recycled water. Work on his projects, sleep, repeat. For 103 years the pattern held. He spoke to no one. No one knew he was here. That was how he wanted it. But today, something was different. Taewan sat at his main console, studying the readings from his subsurface scanner. The device was old, built back when he first came to the desert. It mapped the layers of rock and sand below, looking for water or mineral deposits. Mostly it found nothing interesting. The desert kept its secrets, except now it showed something impossible. 200 meters down, directly beneath his bunker, the scanner detected an energy signature. Not radioactive, not thermal, something else entirely. The readings made no sense. His equipment had never seen anything like this before. Taewan ran the scan again. Same result. He checked the equipment for malfunctions. Everything worked perfectly. He sat back in his chair and stared at the screen for a long time. He could ignore it. Probably should ignore it. In 103 years, he had learned that curiosity led to pain. Better to stay in his routine, stay safe, stay alone. But the reading bothered him. It called to him like an itch he could not scratch. 3 days later, he sent down his first mining drone. The drone was something he had built himself, designed for excavation and sample collection. It burrowed through sand and rock with laser cutters and magnetic scoops. Taewan watched its progress on his monitors, guiding it deeper. 1 week passed, then 2, then 3. The drone cut through layers of sandstone, ancient bedrock, and compressed mineral deposits. Taewan worked 16 hours a day, forgetting to eat, barely sleeping. Something had awakened in him, a feeling he thought had died decades ago. Purpose. On the 23rd day, the drone broke through into an open space. Taewan leaned forward, his heart pounding. The drone's cameras showed a cavern, perfectly spherical, exactly 15 meters in diameter. The walls were smooth, too smooth to be natural. And in the center, suspended by nothing visible, hung an object that made his breath catch. A sphere, black as obsidian, covered in patterns that seemed to move when he looked away. Geometric shapes that interlocked in ways that hurt his eyes, beautiful and terrible at the same time. The energy reading came from this object. The signature was stronger now, pulsing with a rhythm that felt almost alive. Taewan spent the next 2 months excavating a tunnel. He used all 4 of his mining drones, working them in shifts, widening the passage until he could walk down himself. He built supports and installed lights. He tested the air quality. He was cautious, but he could not stop. When he finally stood in the cavern looking up at the sphere, he felt small. The object was massive, dwarfing him. The patterns on its surface definitely moved. He could see it now. They flowed like water, like living script, never repeating the same configuration twice. He set up equipment around it. Scanners, cameras, sampling devices. For months he studied it from every angle. He took measurements. He ran tests. He tried to date it using every method he knew. Nothing worked properly. His age-dating equipment gave readings of 50,000 years, then 5 million, then showed error codes. His material analysis could not identify the substance. It was not metal, not stone, not any element in human databases. The patterns on the surface seemed to exist in more dimensions than his instruments could measure, but one thing became clear. The sphere was a power source. The energy it contained was beyond anything humanity had ever created. Enough power to run a city for 1,000 years, or terraform a planet, or destroy a star, and there was a way to turn it on. Taiwan found the activation mechanism on the 307th day of his study. A section of the patterns formed a sequence, not buttons or switches, but places where human hands could touch. The sphere was waiting for contact, waiting for someone to awaken it. He stood before it, hands raised, fingers inches from the surface. One touch and everything would change. He knew this with absolute certainty. Whatever this object was, whoever had built it, they had left it here for a reason, and that reason was connected to humanity. Should he do it? Should he risk it? In 103 years, he had trusted no one. The corporations had betrayed him. His colleagues had abandoned him. Even Hei-In, the woman he had loved, had vanished when he needed her most. Humanity had shown him its worst face. But maybe that was why he had to be the one to make this choice. He had no loyalty to governments or companies, no ambition for power or wealth. He was alone, disconnected, with nothing left to lose. If this sphere was dangerous, if it would destroy everything, perhaps that was what humanity deserved. If it was something else, something wonderful, then maybe he could do one last good thing before he died. Taiwan took a deep breath. The desert wind howled far above, but down here in the ancient cavern all was silent. The sphere waited, patient as stone, old as mountains. He pressed his hands against the surface. The patterns blazed with light, and the world changed forever. The light was warm, not burning. Taiwan expected pain, or at least heat, but the sphere felt like touching summer water. The patterns flowed under his palms, spiraling outward in waves of soft blue radiance. He could not pull his hands away. The sphere held him gently but firmly, like it was reading him. Then the voice came. Not through his ears, but directly into his mind. Genetic scan complete. Species identified. Human. Individual consciousness detected. Language processing initiated. Taiwan tried to speak but could not move his jaw. His whole body was frozen, locked in place by invisible force. Caretaker species confirmed. Authorization granted. Seed protocol activating. The light grew brighter, filling the cavern. Taiwan closed his eyes against the glare, but it made no difference. The light was inside his head now, showing him things he had no words for. Galaxies spinning, worlds being born, civilizations rising and falling like waves on a beach. Then, as suddenly as it began, it stopped. Taiwan stumbled backward, gasping. His hands were his own again. The sphere still glowed softly, but the blinding light had faded. In front of him, floating in the air, was a holographic display. Text appeared, shifting and changing until it settled into Korean characters. Welcome, First Shepherd. This unit is Planetary Development System 074. You may address this system as you wish. A designation is recommended for ease of communication. Taiwan stared at the words. His mind was racing, trying to process what had just happened. The sphere was a machine, an intelligent machine, and it had been waiting for him. What are you? He managed to say, his voice hoarse. This unit is a terraforming megastructure created by the predecessors, an extinct civilization that existed approximately 3 million years before human evolution. This unit has been dormant beneath this location for 2.4 million years. Monitoring local species development, human civilization has reached sufficient complexity to activate this protocol. The words appeared on the hologram as the voice spoke in his mind. Taiwan felt dizzy. 3 million years. The object in front of him was older than humanity itself. Why did you activate now? Why for me? This unit activates only for members of the designated caretaker species who demonstrate specific psychological and ethical parameters. You were selected based on observed patterns of behavior over the past 103 years. You have shown patience, wisdom, and most importantly, restraint. These are required qualities for a shepherd. Taiwan laughed, a bitter sound. Restraint? I've been hiding in a hole for a century. Precisely. You possessed knowledge and capability to harm others, yet chose isolation over revenge. You have been offered the ultimate power, and your first instinct was caution. These actions mark you as suitable. The hologram changed, showing a three-dimensional map of the galaxy. Thousands of points of light glowed across it, scattered among the stars. 10,000 seed units were deployed across this galaxy. Most have never activated. Species that attempt to weaponize predecessor technology are automatically locked out of all systems. 4,812 species have been denied access. 47 species have successfully activated seed units. Humanity is the 47th. Taewon moved closer to the hologram, studying the map. Each point of light represented another sphere like this one, scattered across unimaginable distances. "What does this thing do?" he asked. "Well, what is it for?" "This unit provides planetary-scale environmental manipulation, atmospheric processing, geological restructuring, biological ecosystem development, climate control. The predecessors designed these systems to help younger species develop and spread across the galaxy. The technology cannot be used for destructive purposes. This restriction is encoded at the quantum level and cannot be bypassed." "You're saying this is a terraforming device? Something that can change entire worlds?" "Correct. This unit can transform a dead planet into a living paradise, or repair a damaged world, or optimize environmental conditions for biological life. All functions serve creation and preservation, never destruction." Taewon felt the weight of it settling on him. The sphere could do things humanity had dreamed about for centuries. Real working terraforming technology, the kind of power that nations would go to war over. "What happens now?" he asked quietly. "You are the first shepherd. This unit is now bonded to your genetic signature and will respond to your commands. You may use this technology as you see fit, within programmed parameters. However, you should be aware of an immediate concern." The hologram changed again, showing a map of the area above the bunker. Red markers appeared, moving across the desert surface. "A research team of 12 humans is approaching this location. They detected this unit's activation signature. Their trajectory will bring them within 1 kilometer of this position in approximately 4 hours. Current weather patterns indicate a Category 4 sandstorm will reach this area in 6 hours. The research team does not have adequate shelter or supplies to survive such conditions." Taewon's stomach tightened. People. After 103 years of solitude, people were coming, and they were in danger. "Show me the team," he said. The hologram displayed images captured from satellites and drones. 12 individuals in environmental suits traveling in 2 vehicles across the dunes. The images were clear enough to show faces. Taewon's heart stopped when he saw the third person, Hae-in. Older, like him, but unmistakable. The woman who had been his partner, his collaborator, his love. The woman who had disappeared 103 years ago, leaving him to face the corporations alone. Or so he had thought. "That woman," he said, pointing with a shaking hand. "Identify her, Dr. Hae-in, age 142, xenoarchaeologist and former terraforming engineer. She was your primary research partner prior to your isolation. Records indicate she has spent considerable resources attempting to locate you over the past century." "Attempting to locate me?" Taewon felt something crack inside his chest. "She left me. She abandoned everything when the corporations came." Correction. Historical records show Dr. Hae-in was framed by corporate interests and forced into hiding. "She has spent 98 years attempting to clear both your names. Her presence on this expedition is not coincidental. She has been searching for evidence that would vindicate your shared research." Taewon sat down hard on the stone floor. All this time he had believed she betrayed him. All this time he had been wrong. The hologram pulsed softly. "The sandstorm approaches. The research team will die without intervention. You have the power to save them. This unit can generate a protective atmospheric bubble around their position, ensuring survival. However, the choice is yours. This is your first test as Shepherd." "Test?" The predecessors believed that power should only be granted to those who use it wisely. "You have been given this technology not because you are perfect, but because you have the capacity to choose correctly. Will you save them, First Shepherd? Even the one you believe wronged you?" Taewon looked at the hologram, at Hae-in's face frozen in the image. 103 years of anger and hurt sat heavy in his chest. 103 years of loneliness and bitterness, but underneath that something else stirred. Something he thought had died long ago. Hope. He had spent a century alone because he believed humanity had failed him. But what if he had been wrong? What if there were people still worth saving? Taewon stood up. He placed his hand on the sphere again, feeling its warmth. "Save them," he said. "All of them." The sphere pulsed with light, and above the desert the wind began to change. The sandstorm hit with the force of a hammer. Wind speeds reached 200 kilometers per hour, turning the air into a brown wall of destruction. Visibility dropped to zero within seconds. The research team's vehicles shuddered under the assault, emergency systems screaming warnings. Inside the lead vehicle, Hei-In gripped her seat as the world outside disappeared into chaos. Beside her, Dong-Hyun, the team's xenoarchaeologist, frantically checked their shelter options. Behind them in the second vehicle, Sun-Hee and 9 others faced the same terrifying reality. They were going to die out here. Then the storm stopped. Not gradually, but instantly. One moment, violent wind tore at their vehicles. The next, perfect calm. Hei-In looked through the viewport and saw something impossible. A dome of clear air surrounded them, perhaps 50 meters across. Beyond its edges, the sandstorm raged like a living creature, but inside the dome, everything was still. The sand beneath their wheels had stopped moving. The air was crystal clear. "What in the name of—" Dong-Hyun whispered. Sun-Hee's voice crackled over the radio from the second vehicle. "Are you seeing this? Someone is helping us. Someone with technology we've never seen before." Hei-In knew. Deep in her bones, she knew. "It's him," she said softly. "He's alive. He's here." The dome moved with them as they drove, a bubble of safety in the storm's heart. It guided them toward a rock formation that should not exist. Surveillance had shown nothing but flat desert here. Yet now a structure emerged from the sand. Concrete walls, reinforced doors, solar panels rising like flowers seeking sun. The bunker. His bunker. When the storm passed 3 hours later, the research team stood outside the entrance. The door was open, waiting. Hei-In went in first. Her heart hammered against her ribs. The bunker was exactly as she imagined it would be. Clean, organized, filled with equipment both familiar and strange. And at the far end, standing beside a console, was Tae-Wan. He looked at her with eyes that held a century of pain. "Hello, Hei-In," he said quietly. She wanted to run to him, to explain everything, to apologize for 100 years of absence. Instead, she stood frozen, tears running down her face. "I thought you were dead," she managed to say. "I wanted you to think that," Tae-Wan replied. "I wanted everyone to think that." The others filed in behind her. Dong-Hyun's eyes were wide, taking in the technology. Sun-Hee, the military observer, maintained professional composure, but her hand rested near her weapon. Jin-Woo, a young engineer barely past his 30th year, looked between Tae-Wan and the equipment with obvious excitement. "You saved us," Sun-Hee said. "That dome, that was your doing," Tae-Wan nodded slowly. "I found something beneath the desert, something that changes everything." Over the next hours, he showed them the tunnel down, the cavern, the sphere, the holographic display explaining what the predecessors had left behind. Dong-Hyun was the first to fully understand. His face went pale. "This is the most significant archaeological find in human history," he whispered. "This proves we're not alone, that we've never been alone." "It's more than that," Tae-Wan said. "This technology can reshape worlds. It can fix what we've broken, grow what we've destroyed, but it comes with rules. It cannot be weaponized, cannot be used to harm. The predecessors built that into its core." Sun-Hee stepped forward. "The Unified Council needs to know about this immediately. This is beyond any individual. This is a matter for all humanity." Tae-Wan looked at her steadily. "The moment I tell the Council, what do you think happens? Governments will fight over it. Corporations will try to steal it. Everyone will want to control it. That's not your decision to make alone," Sun-Hee said firmly. "Actually," Dong-Hyun interrupted, studying the holographic readouts, "it is exactly his decision. The sphere is bonded to his genetic signature. It won't respond to anyone else. He is what the system calls a shepherd." Hei-In finally found her voice. "Tae-Wan, I need to tell you what really happened. A century ago, I didn't abandon you. I was framed. The corporations made it look like I sold your research, but I was trying to protect it. I've spent 98 years searching for evidence to clear both our names. That's why I joined this expedition. I knew something was hidden in this desert. I was hoping to find proof that we were right all along." Tae-Wan closed his eyes. "The sphere told me. It showed me the records. Then you know I never betrayed you. I know now. I spent a century hating you for something you didn't do." The moment hung between them, heavy with lost time. Jin-Woo, who had been quiet, suddenly pointed at the holographic display. Wait, look at this. The sphere's network map. You see these red markers? Everyone turned. The galactic map showed the 47 activated predecessor devices. But there were also other markers. Thousands of them, colored red. What are those? Sun-Hee asked. Dong-hyun worked the controls, his face growing more worried with each passing second. Species that were locked out of the system for trying to weaponize it. 4,812 civilizations that failed the test. He zoomed in on a cluster of red markers. And this one is still active. The display showed a region of space 600 light-years away. A massive empire, 200 star systems strong. Text appeared beside it, Kasari Dominion. Status hostile. Threat level, extreme. They were locked out 3,000 years ago, Dong-hyun read, after they tried to turn predecessor technology into planet-killing weapons. Since then, they've made it their mission to destroy any species that successfully activates a seed unit. They view it as an existential threat. Sun-Hee's communication device beeped. She listened to the incoming message, her face draining of color. Command has detected an anomaly. Multiple faster-than-light signatures inbound to our solar system. Profile matches no known human vessels. Taewon felt his stomach drop. How long? 4 months, Sun-Hee said quietly. They give us 4 months. The bunker fell silent. Outside, the desert wind resumed its eternal howl. Below, the ancient sphere pulsed with patient light. Jinwoo spoke first, his young voice steady despite the fear in his eyes. So what do we do? Taewon looked around at the faces before him. Hae-in, the partner he had lost and found again. Dong-hyun, brilliant and scared. Sun-Hee, duty-bound and practical. Jinwoo, young and hopeful. The others, all looking to him for answers. He had spent 103 years avoiding exactly this, responsibility for others. Connection to humanity, the risk of caring and losing again. But the sphere had chosen him. Not because he was perfect, but because he could choose correctly. We prepare, he said finally. The sphere can't make weapons, but it can create. We'll show the Kasari something they've never seen before. We'll show them what humanity does best. What's that? Jinwoo asked. Taewon placed his hand on the sphere, feeling its warmth spread through him. For the first time in a century, he allowed himself to hope. We survive. No matter the odds, no matter the cost. Humanity survives. The sphere pulsed in agreement, and deep in its ancient programming, protocols began to activate. The Kasari were coming, but they would find Earth ready. Not with weapons, but with something far more dangerous. Human determination. Geneva looked different from above. Taewon watched through the transport window as the city grew closer, its towers gleaming in the afternoon sun. He had not seen civilization in 103 years. The sight of so many buildings, so many people made his chest tight with anxiety. Beside him, Hae-in squeezed his hand gently. You don't have to do this alone, she said. He nodded but said nothing. The sphere was secured in the cargo hold below, humming quietly. Bringing it here to the seat of the Unified Council felt like bringing a bomb to a daycare. But Sun-Hee was right. This was bigger than one person, bigger than his fear of betrayal. The council chamber held representatives from every nation on Earth. 200 faces, all turned toward Taewon as he stood at the central podium. The sphere floated beside him, its patterns moving in mesmerizing waves. Distinguished members, Taewon began, his voice amplified through the hall. 4 months ago, I activated a device left by an ancient alien civilization. This technology can reshape planets. It can turn dead worlds into gardens. It can reverse climate damage and restore ecosystems. It is the most powerful tool humanity has ever possessed. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. A delegate from the North American Federation stood. And you kept this secret for 4 months? Who gave you the right? No one, Taewon said simply. But the technology chose me. It's bonded to my genetics. Only I can use it. That's unacceptable, another delegate shouted. This technology belongs to all humanity. It should be controlled by international agreement, not one individual. I agree, Taewon said, surprising them, which is why I'm here. But there's something else you need to know. We're not the first species to find this technology, and the last group who tried to weaponize it are coming to destroy us. That got their attention. Sun-Hee stepped forward, displaying tactical data on the chamber's screens. The Kasari Dominion. 200 star systems. Military force estimated at 15,000 warships. They've been tracking predecessor technology for 3 millennia. They destroy any civilization that activates it. They'll be here in 3 months and 21 days. The chamber erupted in chaos. Delegates shouted over each other. Some called for immediate military mobilization. Others demanded surrender. A few accused Taiwan of dooming humanity by activating the sphere. The Korean Federation's chief strategist, Miran, stood and waited for silence. When she spoke, her voice cut through the noise. Fighting is pointless. Our entire military fleet would be destroyed in the first engagement. We need a different approach. What approach? The European Union representative demanded. Prayer? Taiwan activated the sphere. The chamber lights dimmed as a holographic display filled the space above them, showing real-time satellite footage of the Sahara Desert. Watch, he said. He placed his hand on the sphere and gave it a command. The desert began to change. It started at the edges, a wave of green spreading across the sand. Grass erupted from the ground. Trees grew and fast forward, reaching full height in minutes. Rivers carved new paths through ancient dunes. Lakes formed in depressions that had been dry for 10,000 years. Rain fell from clouds that appeared from nowhere. In 20 minutes, 50,000 square kilometers of desert became a flourishing forest. The council chamber sat in stunned silence. The sphere cannot make weapons, Taiwan said quietly, but it can create, and creation, properly used, can be its own form of defense. Over the next weeks, Taiwan assembled his team. Heian became his second, coordinating between scientific departments. Jinwoo led teams of engineers adapting human technology to work alongside predecessor systems. Miran developed strategies that didn't rely on destruction. Donghyun researched everything the sphere's database contained about the Kasari. What they learned was troubling. The Kasari had once been like humanity, curious, exploratory, peaceful. Then, 3,000 years ago, their homeworld was destroyed by another species using predecessor technology as a weapon. The survivors became consumed by a single mission: prevent anyone else from having access to such power. They weren't evil. They were traumatized, afraid, and absolutely determined. Taiwan worked 18 hours a day, pushing the sphere to its limits. He created defensive barriers around Earth, not walls but zones of dense asteroid fields that would slow invading ships. He established automated stations on Mars and Venus, beginning rapid terraforming of both planets. He sent signals through the predecessor communication network, letting the other 46 activated civilizations know what was happening. Some responded. A few offered advice. None offered military aid. The galaxy's policy was clear. Each species faced the Kasari alone. Jinwoo approached Taiwan one evening as he worked in the converted command center. The young engineer looked exhausted but excited. I've been studying the sphere's manipulation of matter, Jinwoo said. It doesn't just terraform planets. It can restructure molecules, reorganize atomic bonds, transform one substance into another. The possibilities are incredible. Get to the point, Taiwan said, not looking up from his work. What if we could terraform the Kasari ships themselves? Not destroy them, but change them. Make them something other than weapons. Taiwan stopped and looked at him. Explain, Jinwoo pulled up schematics. Their ships are massive war machines, but they're still just matter. Metal polymers, energy systems. If we can get close enough, the sphere could transform them. Turn weapons into gardens. Convert ammunition stores into water reserves. Make war machines into life support systems. They'd just build more ships. Maybe, but it would buy time. And it would show them we're not a threat. We're not trying to destroy them. We're trying to preserve life. Heian, who had been listening, spoke up. It's insane. But it might work. Miran joined them, studying Jinwoo's plans. The psychological impact would be significant. The Kasari expect resistance, weapons, destruction. They've fought countless civilizations, but what if they encounter an enemy that refuses to kill them? Taiwan thought about his century in the desert, about the moment he chose to save Heian and the others instead of letting them die, about how that single choice had changed everything. There's a problem, he said. The sphere can only affect things within a certain range. We'd need to get very close to their fleet, and they'll be shooting at us the entire time. Then we need volunteers, Sunhee said, entering the room. She had been coordinating with military command. People willing to pilot ships into the heart of the Kasari fleet. It's a suicide mission. No, Taiwan said firmly. No suicide missions. I won't ask people to die for this. You might not have a choice, Sunhee replied. The Kasari will kill millions if they reach Earth. Sometimes the few must risk everything to save the many. The argument continued into the night. Taewon refused to compromise. There had to be another way. It was Dong Hyun who found it, buried in the predecessor database. The communication network, he said, pulling up ancient texts. It's not just for messages. It can transport matter. The predecessors used it to move between their seed units across the galaxy. You're saying we could teleport to the Kasari fleet? Jinwoo asked. Better. We could teleport the sphere itself. Put it right in the middle of their formation. Taewon could control it remotely through the network. Taewon felt hope flicker. Would it work? I don't know, Dong Hyun admitted. The database says it's possible, but it's never been tested with an active shepherd. You'd be spread across 600 light years. Your consciousness connected to the sphere through quantum entanglement. It could kill you. Or worse. What's worse than dying? Hagen asked. Being trapped in the network forever. Your mind scattered across the galaxy, unable to return to your body. The room fell silent. Taewon looked at the faces around him. These people who had become his friends despite his resistance. Hae-in, who never gave up on him. Jinwoo, who reminded him of his younger self. Mi-ran, brilliant and brave. Dong-hyun, wise beyond his years. Sun-hee, dutiful and dedicated. 103 years ago, he had chosen isolation to protect himself from pain. How he had to choose connection even if it destroyed him. I'll do it, he said. When the Kasari arrive, I'll meet them. Not with weapons. With something they've never seen before. Outside, stars wheeled overhead. Somewhere among them, the Kasari fleet advanced, weapons ready, expecting another easy conquest. They had no idea what was waiting for them. The Kasari fleet emerged from faster-than-light travel like a swarm of metal locusts. 300 warships, each one larger than anything humanity had ever built. Their hulls were dark, covered in weapon ports and armor plating. They moved with perfect coordination, centuries of military discipline evident in every maneuver. On Earth, alarms screamed across every military installation. The moment humanity had dreaded for 3 months had arrived. Taewon stood in the command center, connected to the sphere through neural interfaces that Dong Hyun had developed. He could feel the ancient device's presence in his mind, vast and patient. Hae-in stood beside him, her hand on his shoulder. Ready? She asked quietly. No, he admitted. But when has that ever stopped us? The Kasari sent a message first. It appeared on every screen in every language humanity spoke. The translation was perfect, cold, and final. You have activated forbidden technology. You have been judged a threat to galactic stability. Surrender the predecessor device immediately or face extinction. You have 1 hour. Mi-ran looked at Taewon. What do we tell them? Nothing yet, Taewon said. Let them see what we've built first. The Kasari fleet moved into the solar system, weapons charging. They expected defenses. They expected weapons. They expected humanity to fight back in ways they understood. Instead, they found gardens. Mars gleamed green and blue, its atmosphere thick with oxygen, its surface covered in forests and oceans that had not existed 4 months ago. Venus, once a hellscape of acid and heat, now showed clouds of water vapor and the first signs of plant life. Even Earth's moon had been transformed, covered in domed ecosystems that sparkled like jewels. The Kasari fleet paused. Their commander, War Chief Cordan, studied the displays with growing confusion. He had destroyed 43 civilizations for possessing predecessor technology. All had tried to use it as a weapon. All had failed, but these humans had used it to create life. His communication officer spoke. War Chief, we're detecting energy signatures from the terrestrial planet. They match predecessor patterns. I can see that, Cordan growled. They're showing off, trying to intimidate us with what they've built. It won't work. Open fire on the outer colonies. Show them we're serious. The first Kasari weapons discharged. Beams of concentrated energy lanced through space, targeting the automated stations orbiting Mars. Taewon felt it through his connection to the sphere. Here we go, he whispered. He sent the command. The sphere, hidden in a bunker on Earth, activated its full power. Through the predecessor network, it reached across space to touch the Kasari fleet. What happened next would become legend. The Kasari flagship shuddered as its hull began to change. Metal softened and flowed. Weapon ports transformed into windows. Armor plating became soil. Within seconds, grass was growing on the outer surface of the ship. Trees sprouted from what had been missile bays. Water condensed from nowhere, forming streams that flowed along the hull. Cordon stared in disbelief as his warship became a flying garden. "All ships, evasive action," he commanded. But the transformation spread through the fleet like wildfire. Ship after ship changed from instruments of war to vessels of life. Weapon systems became hydroponic gardens. Engine cores converted to power life support for millions instead of weapons for thousands. The fleet's ammunition stores transformed into water reserves. Inside the ships, Kasari soldiers watched in amazement as their environment shifted. Walls that had been cold metal became warm wood. Harsh lighting softened. Air that had smelled of recycled chemicals began to smell like forest after rain. Cordon tried to fire again, but his weapons were gone. "Replaced by orchards, what kind of warfare is this?" he demanded. Taiwan's voice came through the communication channels, gentle but firm. "It's not warfare. It's an invitation. Your ships are still yours. Your people are safe, but you can't hurt anyone now. All you can do is live." The Kasari fleet floated in confusion, 300 garden ships drifting in formation. It was the most bizarre military engagement in galactic history. Then the Kasari boarding parties launched. Despite their ships being transformed, Kasari warriors still had personal weapons. They descended on Earth's defensive positions in drop pods, determined to complete their mission on foot if necessary. Myran's forces were ready. But they didn't fight the way the Kasari expected. Human soldiers met Kasari warriors with non-lethal weapons, stunning fields, binding foam, sonic disruptors that knocked enemies unconscious without permanent harm. When Kasari soldiers fell, human medics rushed forward to treat their injuries. They provided water, food, medical care. The Kasari were completely unprepared for an enemy that refused to kill them. In the flagship, Cordon received reports that made no sense. "They're helping our wounded. They're taking prisoners and treating them well. What is wrong with these humans?" His second-in-command, a younger officer named Vortan, spoke carefully. "War Chief, permission to speak freely?" "Granted. We've been fighting for 3,000 years to prevent anyone from having predecessor technology. We've destroyed dozens of civilizations, but every one of them tried to use it as a weapon. These humans, they're using it to create. They're using it exactly as the predecessors intended." "They're still a threat," Cordon insisted, "are they? Or are we the threat? We've become so focused on preventing misuse that we've forgotten what the technology was actually for." The debate spread through the Kasari fleet. Younger officers, who had never seen their homeworld and only knew endless war, began questioning their mission. Older warriors who remembered the trauma that started everything struggled with what they were seeing. Taiwan, still connected to the sphere, felt the moment when everything shifted. A private communication channel opened. Fortan's voice came through. "Human Shepherd, I request a meeting. There are things you should know about my people. Things that might change the situation." Sun He immediately protested. "It's a trap. Don't trust them." But Heian looked at Taiwan and saw something in his eyes. "You're going to meet him anyway, aren't you?" "Yes," Taiwan said. "Because someone has to take the first step. Someone has to risk trust." The meeting took place on the transformed Kasari flagship, now more garden than warship. Cordon, Vortan, and a dozen other Kasari officers met Taiwan, Hai-In, Miran, and Jin Wu in what had been a weapons control room and was now a grove of flowering trees. Vortan spoke first. "Our homeworld was called Kasar. 3,000 years ago, another species used predecessor technology to crack our planet like an egg. 5 billion dead in a single day. The survivors swore it would never happen again. We've spent 3 millennia ensuring no one could repeat that horror." Taiwan listened quietly. "I understand. You've been trying to protect the galaxy. We've been trying to protect ourselves," Cordon corrected bitterly. "And in doing so, we've become the thing we feared. Destroyers, killers. We've murdered billions to prevent what happened to us from happening again. But you don't have to keep doing it," Heian said gently. "The cycle can end." "How?" Cordon demanded. "How do we trust that you won't use this power against us? Against others?" Taiwan stood and walked to the edge of the grove, looking out at Earth through the transformed hull. "You can't trust that. Trust isn't about certainty. It's about choosing to believe in someone despite uncertainty. But I can offer you something else." He turned back to face them. "Your homeworld. Kasar, the planet that was destroyed. The sphere's database has records of it. Geological data, atmospheric composition, ecosystem details. Everything needed to rebuild it. Let me terraform it for you. Let me give you back what you lost. The Kasari delegation fell silent. Fortan looked like he might cry. Even Cordon's hard expression cracked. Why would you do that? The war chief asked quietly. We came here to destroy you. Because that's what this technology is for, Taiwan said simply. Not destruction, creation, healing, building instead of breaking. You've been afraid for 3,000 years. Let me show you that fear doesn't have to win. Over the next year, Taiwan kept his promise. With the sphere's power channeled through the predecessor network, he reached across 600 light-years to the dead world of Kasar. He rebuilt its shattered crust. He restored its atmosphere. He seeded its surface with life. The process was broadcast to both civilizations. Humans and Kasari watched together as a dead world came back to life. Forests grew where cities had burned. Oceans filled craters left by weapons. The sky cleared from ash gray to brilliant blue. On the final day, rain fell on Kasar for the first time in 3,000 years. Cordon stood with Taiwan on Earth watching the broadcast. Tears ran down the old warrior's face. How do humans do this? He asked. How do you survive your own worst impulses? How did you become wise enough to use this technology correctly? Taiwan thought about his century in the desert. About his isolation, his bitterness, his anger. About the moment he chose to save Heian instead of letting her die. About every day since then, choosing connection over isolation, creation over destruction. We didn't survive them, he said quietly. We're still learning. Every day we wake up and choose again. We fail, we hurt each other. We make terrible mistakes. But we keep trying. That's the human answer. Not that we're good, but that we keep trying to be better. Fortan, listening nearby, nodded slowly. Perhaps that's what the